All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hopefully everyone that's going to be here is here already. So for you new folks that have never met me, I'm Matt McKibben, Environmental Health and Safety. We used to be down by the Bears, but we're kind of in the process of moving to McCluskey. So right now I'm in room 111, which is right across from Olivia Yang. It's kind of in between dispatch and the main entrance.
I didn't want people to see us.
Yeah. Right away.
Discover the mute button.
Yeah, mute yourself, please.
Thought I had it set to where it was mute upon arrival, but maybe not. So guys, this is Asbestos Awareness. I'll try to keep this brief as possible. You guys can all view the slides. Got it going here. Continue on. So yeah, we're at McCluskey now, EH&S. I think it'll allow us to better serve you guys and a lot of the trades and stuff too, which we work with. So that's kind of nice. I think they're going to be putting the health and safety building kind of on economy mode, no heat and cooling. So I think eventually they're going to put some Johnson folks in there when that building ever gets torn down. But in the meantime, it's going to, I think, lay empty for a little bit. So I don't know who was just over there waxing, but you guys did a fantastic job, by the way. Squeaky clean. I can tell you even moved the furniture and kind of got it underneath the legs and all that stuff. And then we moved out, so we couldn't enjoy it as much. Nice work over there. All right. So you'll notice me, I kind of skip over some slides too. Like I said, I'm going to be breezing through this. We do have some new employees here, so I got to make sure I cover the topics that we're supposed to, but it's not going to be ad nauseum, okay? Eric, mute it. The Holland Library ceiling there, I think. So we're going to briefly kind of cover the properties of asbestos, uses, health hazards real quick. I'm going to go over some activities that you guys do. You guys do, in a way, some asbestos work. Mute it.
What can you do here? Go to,
Yeah, we won't really cover the regulations much. Naturally, we're kind of covering it by the way we're doing the training.
period that again.
Asbestos resources. And we'll get on. Everyone still hearing me okay? Even the new groups?
Yep.
Thank you, guys. You never know with this Zoom. So why do we keep taking this every year? It's because it actually says it in the reg. And when I say reg, I mean regulations. It's a big book of asbestos regulations. You guys are notched in there. You guys actually do a form of asbestos work. And that's really the stripping and the buffing you guys do. You come in contact with asbestos. So you have to do some training every year, just like at all the other trades over here at McCluskey. We got the carpenters, electricians, plumbers, all that stuff take this. And those guys take even more advanced training. They have a 40-hour course so they can actually do asbestos removal. You know, one thing to remember, you guys aren't asked to do asbestos removal. You just kind of come in contact with it. So we want you to be careful. We'll show you some ways to be careful. But we don't ask you to remove it. There's a very little exception to that I'll cover. Practical reasons. So, properties of asbestos. What is this stuff? It's naturally occurring fibrous mineral, has good tensile strength. So those little fibers. Eric, mute it. Very strong fibers, very handy to mix in with other materials to strengthen them.
Okay.
Very flexible, it's heat resistant, it's electrical resistant. It's a good insulator, thermal insulator as well. So you see the pipe insulations and stuff. You guys see a little quarter on there? They kind of, somebody sloughed off some fibers from a
little bit.
asbestos rock ore. Kind of gives you a little bit of scale. So what they do in asbestos products, they typically take that rock and they grind the heck out of it and make it a powder. Still looking to mute it, fellas. There's a bunch of different types of asbestos, different mineral forms. basically what it is, if you guys are a geological geek, it's a metamorphic rock. So it's a rock that was already existing and then
Okay.
put under super high pressure in the deep depths of the earth. Typically found near mountain chains and stuff like that, where there's a lot of earth to earth pressure. And then that existing rock metamorphized, kind of melted a little bit in a way, and it formed asbestos. Kind of similar to diamonds. Think about it. So diamonds and graphite used to use for pencils, the exact same chemical composition, both made of carbon. Those diamonds are put on, or excuse me, that carbon is put under super high pressure in the middle of the earth, turns into a diamond. It's kind of the same process. Asbestos, this stuff's super special. These are some just different forms. So it's super special asbestos. So newbies out there, not quite sure what it is. Veterans out there are falling asleep already, I can tell. But for you newbies, what makes asbestos special? For one, it's very small particle size. Very, very small. Number two, it's a carcinogen. Carcinogens cause cancer. It actually gets in your body and it mutates the DNA in such a way that it causes cancer. And number three, your body has difficulty removing it. So it's a carcinogen, then it can't get rid of it at the same time. So those are kind of the three properties of why this stuff is different than maybe everything else. There's other stuff that's a small particle size, like, I don't know, wildfire smoke. You always come across that stuff come July and August, right? But some of the crappiness with wildfire smoke is it has just super small particles. Why is small particle size a big deal? Because it gets into the lungs. It's into the lower respiratory tract. So I got a little cartoon of a lung here. Real large particle sizes get caught up in the upper respiratory tract, but the throat, kind of the upper end of the lungs, stuff that has some space, it's all caught up in there and your body can get rid of it pretty easily. Anything with a small particle size, whether it's asbestos or smoke,
Hearing okay?
chemicals, it's a bad thing because it goes deep into your lungs. Deep into your lungs is a problem because that's where the actual oxygen, carbon dioxide exchange takes place.
No,
That's bad. You don't want things back in there. Eric, you know how to use the mute button?
sorry.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Zoom's a pain in the butt. So we have these three different properties. And yeah, I could try to mute him. There's so many people on here. I think we got him. Thank you, fellas, for hanging in there. So small particle size. So you take something that's very similar, a fiber like fiberglass. One of the things that fiberglass doesn't have is small particle size. They're large, they're big, you can see them. Look at them in your hand, you'll get fiberglass insulation, something like that. See it in your hand. So that gets caught up in your upper respiratory tract. Fiberglass is an awesome irritant. You ever worked around that stuff? Itchy eyes, gets in your pants, you get itchy pants. But it doesn't get deep into your lungs, so it doesn't cause the problems. Wildfire smoke, though, if you have asthma or something, it does get deep into the lungs, so it causes your problems. All right, we'll move on. Computer's freezing up. There we go. So those three properties cause some different issues. Mesothelioma, lung cancer, those are two different types of cancer. Lung cancer is just generally in the lung tissue. Mesothelioma is the meso cells behind the lungs. So it's when it goes past your lungs. The pleural membrane kind of holds your lungs to the rest of your body, kind of a white tissue, connective tissue. Those little weaselly fibers can get back in there and cause cancer because it's a carcinogen. Asbestosis is a little bit different. That kind of hits on the property of body has difficulty removing it. Asbestosis, those asbestos fibers get caught in the lung and your body tries to get rid of it. And the immune system, the B cells and macrophages and stuff like that surround the foreign invader and it just can't get rid of it. So it forms scar tissue. Those little B cells die across the fiber and they just kind of start collecting up and just kind of form this nasty little scar tissue around each fiber. And if you inhale enough fibers over time, clogs your lungs, makes it hard to breathe. You see a lot of people with asbestosis with oxygen canisters nearby. It's very difficult to breathe. And usually the common property with all these, 15 or 30 more years to develop. So one thing people ask me, kind of risk, to do with safety and health, we look at risk and things. So the risks, the high risks, we look at the profiles of the people that get asbestos diseases. And I get calls every once in a while, just kind of regionally from union shops and stuff like that in the trades. Health and safety field, we talk to each other. And these are the type of profiles of the people that come down with asbestos disease. Very routine. Most of the time, it involves long-term exposure throughout a lifetime. It's not just small exposures here and there on occasion, working on asbestos at home or something like that. There's a very clear pattern to it. A lot of those people who have asbestos disease were in the military, and then they later on went to the trades. And if you look at the military exposure, especially in the Vietnam era and whatnot, those older ages, they worked with a lot of asbestos back then. So there's a lot of exposure in the military. And then they continued to have exposure in the trades. So they became a plumber, carpenter, whatnot. And they continued to have asbestos exposure. So if you look at their lifetime of work, they're being exposed quite constantly. Long-term exposures. We also get a group of people that just have very high exposures. In a short time, maybe they worked at an asbestos manufacturing plant of some sort where they made products. They don't really do that in the United States anymore. Where they made asbestos gaskets or they manufactured pipe insulation, something like that. You'll see really high exposures in those settings. And people only work there 2-3 years or something like that, but you'll still see disease from that group. And the third one is very important too, is a smoker. Smoking increases the risk of all those asbestos diseases 50 to 90 times. So a lot of times we'll see 2 of these profiles in each person that has disease. So they'll have a long-term exposure and they're a smoker, or they worked in manufacturing and they're a smoker. Smoking is bad. It just compounds the risk with people. So those are the 3 things. You'll notice, really for the most part, custodial work is not really an exposure hazard. We don't see custodians kind of in that profile. And that's just because naturally, although you have the potential for exposure, if we're handling this stuff correctly, you just don't fit that profile. So that's kind of the part of this training too, is to make sure you have the knowledge you need not to fall into one of those groups. Okay? Woohoo. You guys still with me? Sure. Who's this guy? I just threw this up here because this is our lab over at EHS. So we analyze asbestos air samples. That's it right there. Just a microscope. Magnifies 400 times. So we get these little filters. They're about the size of a quarter. And we funnel air through them. And we're taking asbestos air samples. And we take them on campus for asbestos work. We're removing it on purpose. Contractors, we'll take it inside work areas, we'll take it outside work areas where maybe you guys are working to make sure there's no leakage or anything like that when they're removing stoves. Analyze it right here. Pretty simple stuff. That's Stefan, by the way. Because you ever met Stefan. This is what it looks like once we get in there. You guys have seen this before. I like keeping this up. See those big shiny fibers there? really bright. Those are fiberglass fibers. Big, relatively big. So this is magnified 400 times. If you look closely on the one on the right, you got little teeny fibers in there. Those are asbestos fibers kind of mixed in. It's kind of common, especially when doing demolition work. You're just doing both. There'll be some fiberglass insulation. And maybe they're removing drywall with some asbestos joint compound. We'll get these samples. It's kind of mixed together. Kind of gives you a point of view of fiber size, particle size. Asbestos fibers are tiny. Can't really see it on the left, but on the right, you can definitely see fibers in there, asbestos ones. Next is a little zoom in too. See those little, it looks like shaving stubble, right? You aren't gonna see that stuff in the air. Way too small. In fact, it's super blurry, but right down here, there's this little reference point. This is 5 microns right here. 5 microns in size, it's pretty small. If you ever geeked it out and kind of look at the wildfire smoke, you'll hear a term PM 2.5. It's one of the kind of the air monitoring parameters that we use. PM 2.5, particulate matter less than 2.5 microns. So if we were looking at that under a microscope, then some of these little dots here would be PM 2.5. That's the most hazardous form of hazardous particle size. It's deep in the lung, right? So when we look at high PM 2.5 values during wildfire season, those are bad values. You can see them low. Friable versus non-friable. We kind of go over this every year because it's kind of classifying the hazard of asbestos. Friable building materials, friable products, what we're talking about here, they can be reduced to powder by hand pressure when dry, so they're dusty. Don't handle those, please. Non-friable products, fibers are usually bound within a matrix of other materials, usually like tar, vinyl, or cement. It's mixed in. Asbestos is handy, right? So it's used as a thickening agent a lot of times. Some of those vinyl composite tiles, vinyl asbestos floor tiles that you guys have to work with, they mix the asbestos in with kind of an asphalt product and thickened it up. Add some resilience to the tile. And they mixed it with a lot of other products too, like you think of like a caulk or a putty, something you put in a caulk gun. Sometimes the mixtures can be runny and they'll add some asbestos to it to add some bulk. Almost like you guys that cook out there, like a cornstarch or arrowroot powder, heard of that stuff? Makes something thick. That's what asbestos does. If you're making that Thanksgiving gravy, you add some cornstarch to it, thickens it up, right? Kind of the same thing they did with asbestos when they added it to products. And those mixed products are typically non-friable. Floor tiles are, certainly, a little bit easier to deal with. So yeah, some of these pictures are recycled last year. They look familiar. Non-friable products, floor tiles and friable products are stuff that you guys shouldn't really be maintaining. Something like fireproofing up in the ceiling. It's looking up at the ceiling of Jackson Hall, I believe. And the sheet vinyls. Sheet vinyls are a little exception to the stuff you work with, though. That stuff can be friable. That little gray backing you see behind there, it's pretty much just construction paper. Same type of material that you buy, you know, for arts and crafts for your kids. Construction paper you can tear early easily, and it's friable. You look at it closely, the back of those sheet vinyls. Got the 70s green. You can see, but underneath is that friable asbestos paper underneath. So you want to be very careful with those products. Boop, boop. Pipe insulation. It's that little mudded fittings, they call them, little elbows. And that gray stuff you see at the elbow or the end. It's asbestos fitting. And again, they just had a bag of asbestos. they kind of mix to some pre-mix, to kind of thicken something up. They mixed it with water in a bucket and applied that stuff by hand. I'm gonna fill in the gaps from the fiberglass insulation. There's some damaged stuff, steam tunnels, pipe insulation in the steam tunnel on the left. That was just taken recently. It looks like it's been had better days. That stuff's pretty fireable, the pipe insulation. It's almost like chalk, if you really look at it. White, powdery. Not good. Little asbestos cement products. Ceiling tiles, actually right outside my office here at McCluskey. Some asbestos ceiling tiles. Joint compounds and plasters. This is super common. So you can see the white compound here. It's usually like a 2% asbestos, and they're finishing drywall. They put the joint compound on there. They're gonna sand it a little bit, give it a nice paintable surface to finish. That joint compound oftentimes contains about 2%. Again, they used it as a thickening agent. Thicken up that compound a little bit, make it a paste. So we have asbestos exposure limits. I was talking about our little lab we had there. Doing asbestos work, whether it's a contractor or in-house work, which we do. About 25, 30 guys certified to do asbestos work over here at McCluskey. We'll do air monitoring on them. Inside work area, outside work area, making sure our work's contained. All right, let's skip over some of this stuff. So exposure controls, what we do to handle asbestos during removal. Big, nasty, dirty jobs, we'll use local exhaust ventilation. HEPA-filtered vacuums are pretty good too. You can close the workspace with plastic. Make sure those little fibers aren't migrating out to where other people work, where they're not supposed to. Always use wet methods. Clean it up right away, we bag it, get it out of there. These are what some abatement zones, controls look like. A lot of plastic in asbestos abatement world. If it's isolating work areas, or like in the case of the picture on the upper left, we're doing some asbestos work overhead, so we'll put plastic on the floors, all that stuff, crap falls down on the floor. We can clean it up very easily on plastic. It's better than having it drop down on carpet and have somebody else clean it up, right? Yeah. So we use plastic, easier to clean up, and we'll roll that plastic up when we're done and just bag it and dispose of it properly. Got some other tools here. Tools attached to HEPA vacuum, so it sucks all that asbestos dust away right at the cut points. Keeps the dust down. It's kind of some general controls we use in the industry. These are some warning signs from wherever we're doing asbestos work. This is kind of handy for you guys and everyone else in the general public. You see these signs, we're doing asbestos work behind those signs. Basically tell you not to enter, so please don't. All these are required when we're removing asbestos. Just some examples out. These are some examples out in the field. Asbestos signage, asbestos roll tape, stuff like that. More signage. Oh, so this is what it looks like bagged up. It's been super specially bagged up. It's all labeled. If you look really closely, it says danger asbestos. So we bag it all up inside the work area and we take it out. It's all bundled up. And the left here is actually the insulation shop. Because I think the background looks familiar. We store it there until we can get a dumpster. All right, we're gonna skip this waste hauling section. Let's see, building facility owner responsibilities. So especially you newbies that aren't familiar with the process, whenever we're doing any sort of construction or maintenance work. Oh, we're getting some feedback here. All right, mute check. So one thing we have to do with construction and maintenance projects is have what's called a good faith inspection. It's just an asbestos report. So we have to outline everything that contains asbestos that we're going to be working on, so everyone knows. So we have to treat it properly if we're going to disturb it. So we don't just do this stuff willy-nilly. We don't just go in and start demolishing stuff and buildings and doing projects without knowing what contains asbestos. So it's good to know for your information. We also inform everyone else of asbestos work, and we do that through my facilities. We also have pre-construction meetings with occupants or who's ever paying for it. If you guys are signed up for my facilities, everyone can be signed up for that. I know you supervisors are, so you guys know what's going on in your work area. Okay. I haven't done much asbestos work lately. The capital projects have been pretty minimal with all this budget cut stuff going on. So it's been a pretty slow year. So number 3 there, permit only certified individuals to perform asbestos work. That's what I was talking about with the 25 or 30 trades workers that are certified to do it. Only they can do it. All right, so here's where we kind of get with you guys. Now we're getting into nitty gritty with custodial work, okay? Instead of the general stuff. So recognize damaged asbestos. You guys are the front lines. You guys are facilities, services. So as a group, you, I, trades workers, stuff, people who are maintaining the buildings, building mechanics, everyone here as a group is maintaining campus buildings. And we're kind of on the hook for recognizing problems, whether we like it or not. So I want you guys to kind of be trained to recognize damaged asbestos and report it. Harp on that every year. Nobody else is going to report this stuff for the most part. Every once in a while I'll get a complaint from an occupant or something like that that kind of has enough knowledge and wherewithal to speak up. But for the most part, it's you and I. It's us as a group. Okay. So recognize damage in your work area. Floor tiles, upper left. We got lots and lots of pictures here. Even in Eric's area. Got pipe insulation here that looks pretty furry. We got some water damage here. There's some asbestos popcorn ceiling kind of peeling off, right? This came from housing where it came pretty close to dropping on someone's bed. Pipe insulation that's kind of barely on the pipe. I'd classify that as damage. Oh, there we go. Here's our sheet vinyl I was talking about, right? Stuff with the asbestos paper backing. Got some damage there, right? Transitions especially. That's the thing with sheet vinyls, right? It's typically the transitions and the seams. So that stuff comes out in 4-foot rolls, right? They roll it out. And then they kind of glue the seams together. Well, those are weak points. And those are typically where we're going to see damage, just like in the picture here. That's a little transition. It goes from sheet vinyl just to concrete. I think that is Commons bathroom. So that's chipping away pretty good. That's more than kind of your average damage. So that's something I would like you guys to bring forward. Oh, here's another one. Anyone want to guess where that's at? Eric.
Holland Library.
Yeah, Holland Library. Woohoo. So actually what I was going to do with you guys is do a little video on how to do some cleaning with this stuff. But you guys did such a good job of cleaning the floor tile down there. There was nothing to clean. So this is chairware, right? Lots of chairware. They don't have the proper chair casters. I think that's a second floor. And you can just see the reflections here off the floor tile, right? You get these circular patterns here, and this is a large area. And it's just wearing out that floor tile. So I went up there and created a work order. Maybe it's Christmas time. Maybe it's the last time I saw you, Eric. Just because I saw this, because I looked at my shoes, and they were red. They had a little red powder on them. That's bad. All right. And one thing you guys can look for to look at kind of testing chair casters is to take a little key, or even if you guys have fingernails, I don't, and do a little pinch test on those chair casters. They should have some give to them, some sort of rubberized or kind of really soft plastic to them. And those are compatible for hard floor tiles, right? You see a lot of plastic ones around. Some of the cheaper chairs, they don't really have an option of hard floor or carpet. They just have buy a chair, and it's usually plastic. Those will typically wear floor tile. So in cases like these, we need to get that fixed. It's a cosmetic thing, right? It's a pain in the butt, whether it's asbestos tile or not. And it's also kind of a hazard if it's sitting there for long enough. These have been wearing there for a while. The setup's new. Looks like new tables, new chairs. So this amount of wear in a short time, those are awful casters. And those are the plastic kind. They're wearing it pretty good. So, but I went up there again and it's going to do some kind of demonstration cleaning. You guys have, cleaned that area extensively well, and I didn't see any more of that powder on my shoes. That's bad. But I did see some on the casters themselves. I think I got that on the next slide. Yeah. So if you look at the caster themselves, it doesn't really show up, but they were red. Kind of a red powder on those wheels, right? That's just bad news. So they're just wearing them out quickly. Of course, nobody's down there, the library administration at this time, but we're working with them to try to replace that stuff. Yeah, I mean, you just see the kind of the white. These are dark burgundy floor tiles, and they're kind of white because they've been waxed, and then the wax kind of comes up and turns white, mixes in with the powder from the floor tile. It's an exposure hazard. We'll kind of go over cleaning that. So still looking on the lines of damage. This is bad damage. Don't clean up something like this, okay, guys? This is at College Hall, I think. Maybe Wilson Short. It's a little storage area that the department was using. Nobody's in there much. But, kudos to you guys. A custodian got with the occupants on that was using that, and they created a work order to get this fixed. And this was actually an asbestos paint they used on the plaster. So there's some water intrusion. This is like below ground. This is the foundation, kind of the rock foundation they're saying at College Hall behind it. So there's some water getting through there. The plaster's peeling out. A big mess on the filing cabinets, right? And that paint you saw, not the actual plaster, because the plaster is like a sandy cement-like material, right? Literally, it was like sand, beach sand. It's falling down on the cabinets, but the paint itself was actually what was asbestos. And sometimes they use an encapsulating paint, especially on concrete masonry or some of these plasters, where they add a little asbestos to the paint, like 2%, and it helps it soak in better and fill in pores. So I guess that's why they use asbestos paint in this little area. But yeah, it's an exposure hazard. If you guys see something like this, definitely this is a work order level. We need to have that fixed, asbestos or not, right? No, we're circling around back to Eric's area, Holland. I keep picking on Holland just because this is just a nemesis. We just have acres and acres of floor tiles over there, and they're just at the end of their service life. So we've been patching it up. You see the different colors here, back here. They've been patching it here, patching it there. We've just been chasing our tails, repairing these floor tiles. If you look at the reflection off these tiles, some tiles you see a reflection, some tiles you don't. That's just because they're buckling up, they're hitting different angles, and they're kind of crunchy as you walk over them. It's awful. You need to get rid of them. Long term, that's the goal. In the meantime, we're just chasing one tile at a time. But if you see something like this, I already know about Holland, of course. If you start seeing like systemic issues, tiles failing large areas, whether it's water damage, salt damage, or whatever, please get a work order in, work with your supervisor, and we'll at least get it on the radar. See if we can get it fixed. Oh, more Holland. Just a little bit of damage. Some water damage around the window, right? Maybe some little chunks fall out there. I know at Holland they have asbestos in the joint compound there on the wallboard. So could be a little exposure risk there. There's more chair wear. Chair wear, it's a bad word around here. Bad stuff. It's annoying, isn't it? So the stores around here where departments buy their new stuff, new chairs, whatnot, they really look into getting the correct chair caster, the appropriate caster to where they're going to be placed. The problem is, of course, at the university is once you buy chairs, chairs tend to move. I just moved over to McCluskey here and stole a chair. So it happens all the time. And you get chairs that were designed for one area and then they just get moved around. Or they get them at surplus. And those incompatible chairs just end up in a place like this. Cause donuts. But we too try to get departments with the right casters. All right, so what do you do with damaged asbestos? What do you do? So number one, please just report it to your supervisor, any of those damage situations. Supervisors, we just talked about it. We get chronic problems that they need to be dealt with through a work order. You guys can work with me on that. You guys submit plenty of your own. That's fine. We just need to get it on the radar. If it's an asbestos hazard, just use that keyword in the work order. So who's ever distributing the work kind of perks their ears up a little bit so we know how to deal with it. And I can look at it too. I'm able to look up stuff that's asbestos in it, figure out what to do. So number 3 with you guys, if small scale, so I'm talking small scale is less than 1 square foot. 1 square foot is just one tile, roughly, right? Plus or minus. Small scale, less than 1 square foot, or involves worn floor tiles. You have the option to clean it up using wet methods. All right. I'm not directing you to. I'm just saying you guys can. I'll show you how to do that in just a second. It's not really showing you. It's just like a 2-step process. So number 4, what to do with damaged asbestos. Supervisor and EHS may need to work with occupants on finding proper chair casters, like I was saying that. Hall and library. Definitely do work with them on that stuff. Costs are always an issue. Libraries don't have a whole lot of money, but that's stuff that we can figure out. At least get it on the radar, okay? There may be some other things we can do in the short term, like maybe wax it more. Waxing is a great alternative, protects it a little bit longer, but long term, that's not the solution. But to repair damage like that, even if we get the great casters, we'll probably need to wax it. Okay. So cleaning procedures. It's really complicated, guys. Wet cleaning using disposable rags or paper towels of very small amounts of damage. So that little picture I had of the windowsill had a little, maybe little chunky monkeys coming off the wall there a little bit. I don't have a problem if you guys clean up those chunky monkeys. Use a little spray bottle, kind of spray it down a little bit, wet down a paper towel, and kind of do a little swish swash there, and you can clean that up. There's no exposure hazard there. Just please put it in a bag, seal it up, dispose of it. Small scale, okay? You guys aren't abatement workers. Have no problem with that. Same thing with popping a floor tile. If it's a trip hazard or something like that and it's completely delaminated from the concrete, don't have a problem if you bag it. HEPA vacuums, number 2. Although they're a great method to prevent exposure, these HEPA vacuums is actually what we use for asbestos removal. Don't use yours, please. I put this up here because of the housing side. Try to use theirs. So HEPA vacuums per se are great. They filter the exhaust air coming out of the vacuums with a HEPA filter. Perfect. Custodial vacuums generally don't do a good job at it. Though. You get the backpack version and stuff like that. They may be HEPA vacs, they may be marketed as such, but they aren't up to the high standards that we should be using for asbestos. So I don't want you guys using your own. Plus, you get asbestos contamination in your HEPA vac, eventually you're gonna have to clean it, right? And get a bunch of asbestos dust in there. You're basically creating another exposure hazard just by cleaning it. So don't use them. Long story short, don't use them. So that's why I say, number one, you contaminate your entire vacuum and you risk employee exposure while cleaning it. Number two, not all HEPA vacuums are created equal. You know, you buy a Hoover vacuum wherever, they'll brag about how they're HEPA vacs and whatnot, but reality is they're not sealed very well. Air goes around those little filters. Just don't do it. You see the note on the bottom. The asbestos trades, the trade workers, they have special ones they use. We label it with a big sign saying we use it for asbestos. It's cleaned in a very specific area in a very specific way. So people kind of know this HEPA vac's a little bit different. But they're pretty expensive ones too. They're very well sealed. All right. So when you guys come to cleaning, just use wet methods, wet rags, okay? Seal them up in a bag. Waxing, stripping, buffing, etc. of asbestos floors. This is where the training comes in with you guys. And Labor and Industries, OSHA, they actually call this stuff asbestos work because there's potential exposure there. So what do they say to do? Avoid stripping if at all possible. A lot of times it's just not all possible, right? So just minimize it as much as possible. The tips they give you, use the least abrasive pad possible to do the work. Start with the white. If that's not working, move your way up. Don't start with the black and move your way down. That's kind of what they're saying, okay? Operate the machine at lowest speed possible to accomplish the task. Again, start slow, work your way up to a higher speed if necessary. Low speed, slow, slow, slow. That's what they want. It's pretty well documented. You get people to crank it up to high speed, not really paying attention. There's clearly some more fiber release in those type of operations, clearly. Overall, compared to a lot of other asbestos work, it's relatively low. So I'm just here to give you guys information, okay? Number three, kind of consider softening the wax prior to machine usage. You know, get with your supervisor on this stuff. These are procedures you need to get with them on. But one of the recommendations EPA has is soften it up a little bit before you strip it. It minimizes the machine time on the tile, right? And of course, every chemical stripper kind of has its own manufacturer's recommendations, so you have to get with your supervisor on that. But soften it up a little bit, right? No dry stripping, bad. Got a picture on the next one. I think it's some dry stripping. It's not good. Don't strip if there's no wax to strip. If you've gotten through the wax you need to strip, you're good. You're done. Don't do any more. So there's kind of some dry. Looks like sanding. It's like they're almost sanding it. So you can see the white powder in the picture. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you get in a case where you're using high speeds there, that dust is getting in the air. And as soon as you get past that wax layer that you're trying to remove, then you're getting straight into asbestos floor tile, which is not good. So a lot of this is just common sense, right? So take special care near transitions, those little lumpy areas. You guys kind of know what I'm talking about. I remember years ago, I was doing some air monitoring in your group and doing some stripping. And had the machine, as soon as we went over this little lump, which you can hardly see, you'd have to kind of get down on your hands and knees and kind of look down at the floor, and you could see this lump. It was a building transition. And every time they hit it, it was just boom, boom. And there'd be this little poof. You guys know what I'm talking about. So just be careful around those. Lower your speed around them so you don't get that poofing going on. But very clearly, even in my air monitoring I've done in past lifetimes in the EPA, high-speed machine buffing results in significantly higher asbestos fiber counts, so keep that speed low, okay? So overall, keys to preventing exposure. Some of you guys walked up to me after classes, like, what are just some basic points to kind of minimize exposure? For one, know what contains asbestos in your building. So you know where to put that extra care when you're doing your floors, right? I'll do that at the very end, is asbestos surveys we post online. They're all public, very public. We've surveyed most of our buildings on main campus here. So we know what contains asbestos or not. You know where to put that special care. Definitely follow the guidelines from you and your supervisor on flooring maintenance and some of the stuff I just discussed. Number 3, if you do choose to clean small amounts of asbestos, like the little bit of damaged wall, the floor tile I was talking about, like that Holland Library picture, just use proper procedures, and it's just wet methods. And taking those rags that you guys are using, if it's not disposable, just throwing them in a bag. This is what happens when you get those rags together and then they just sit out in the open. They dry up and then create another hazard. So bag them up. But wet methods, wet methods, wet methods. There's no exposure when everything's wet. Another thing you can do is report damage to asbestos and get it fixed. Don't disturb asbestos on purpose, especially like, I'm thinking like break rooms here. I see some people kind of hanging their clothes on pipe insulation, stuff like that. Avoid that. Get a lot of occupants that do that. Come in there, hanging their lab coats, the wire hanger off pipe insulation. Avoid stuff like that. Prevent damage. Kind of thinking on the lines of winter salt, kind of entrances to buildings and stuff like that. Get some floor mats and stuff in there, kind of being proactive. If there's areas that need protection, like pipes in stairwells or something like that, you see a lot of kids kicking it, or it's ran into by chairs, or think of pipe insulation here. Just dents on pipes and stuff like that. If you notice some problems, you can report that and we can get some protection on something like that. So preventing damage. The last one is quit smoking. That's not really preventing asbestos exposure, but it is preventing asbestos disease because it just has such a correlation with asbestos disease. So I throw that in there. Okay. Guys, that's pretty much it. You guys have any questions on this stuff? Myself, do with asbestos, probably 30–40% of my day is doing asbestos stuff, one form or another. I got my boss, Sean Ringo, on here too at EH&S. We can deal with that stuff. He tends to be more of the purse strings with money and fixing things. I ask him if we can need some money for floor tile abatement or something like that. He's got to ask. So it's us too that kind of helps out with that. So the supervisors can get with us on it. Let's see. I'm just checking the chat here because I haven't for a while. Any questions, you guys? Whoa. Man, I just got like my face here front and center. That's not cool. How are you guys doing? I see a lot of open eyes. That's nice. Sweet. Oh, somebody's passed out. All right. I told you I'd be pretty quick with this stuff, relatively. Katie over there, relaxing in her chair. Doing all right. Mask on. Oh, well, you guys are awesome. Let's see. Looking at the chat. I pictured a bigger office. You need a decorator. Okay. I'll put some Christmas lights up in the back if you want. So guys, yeah, kind of the last half there is, meat and potatoes. Just report damage, stuff like that. Just get it in the queue. Even though stuff like that takes a while. Okay. Not seeing anything else in the chat. Ergonomic stuff, guys. It's been kind of a slow year. I got sidetracked since I last talked to you. Kind of on the ergonomics front. Keep that up, guys, if you can. I tried to kind of hint to you guys to pass that along, and kind of, especially your safety meetings, kind of bringing up ergonomics is kind of a part of them. I strongly urge you guys to keep that up. I'm still going to be paying attention to you guys on that. Excuse me. I want to keep working with you. I got to move on to some other areas, and we're doing the maintenance mechanics and kind of some of their ergonomic issues and whatnot. We're kind of making the rounds across facilities with that stuff. It doesn't mean I'm totally moving on from you guys, but at some point I need you guys as a whole, as a group, supervisors and whatnot, to, if you guys have ergonomic issues, to keep addressing them. I still have suggestions that I got from the last go around, and it's just been a hell of a year. And you know, money's tight right now, but we got to keep this stuff up, keep it in our realm, you know, keep it in your forefront on your thoughts. And I can still be here to help you guys and push things. Okay. Okay. Sound good?
All good.
So I'm going to stop recording here.
Okay.